We're going to make an absolutely delicious steak and cheese sub today, and we're gonna do it all gluten-free and plant-based. Stay tuned, guys. Hey guys, it's Ange with Nutrish Nation, and today we are going to make steak and cheese subs. Not to be confused with the Philly cheesesteak sub, which uses Cheese Whiz. We don't use Cheese Whiz. And while I respect Philly for their admired sandwich, I have to say that in Buffalo we do things a bit differently, and I have personally always loved our way of doing things. Our standard steak and cheese sub comes with chopped up steak, sauteed onions, peppers, and mushrooms, mozzarella provolone and sometimes American cheese, shredded lettuce and tomato, tons of mayo, and oil if you want it. All of that deliciousness comes on a toasted Italian roll. These subs were probably in the top 5 of the most things that I missed when I went gluten-free, because nothing beats a steak and cheese sub at 2 o'clock in the morning. And these subs are readily available to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. You wanna know why? Because they're awesome. That's why. Only awesome things are offered to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I don't know, maybe we just thought they were awesome because we were consuming a lot of alcohol. No, it wasn't the alcohol. Trust me. They're awesome. This sub used to be my favorite, right next to the Stinger sub, and if you don't know what a Stinger sub is, I'm not gonna tell you because I'm gonna do a video on that at some point, but I can tell you it's the steak and cheese sub, but elevated to a higher level of deliciousness. I don't like to be told I can't do things, and so when I went gluten-free and then when I went plant-based, there was a lot of food that I had to give up, and I like food, and I didn't want to have to be deprived, and I didn't want to have to ask permission to eat things that I always loved to eat, and unfortunately that permission was my stomach, because I was sick all the time. So obviously when you're sick all the time, that's a huge motivating factor to not eat it anymore. But I wasn't okay with that answer. I wanted to be able to have a good alternative to the things I always loved. So just like with everything else on this channel, I got into the kitchen and I made myself a steak and cheese sub, and I made that steak and cheese sub awesome. In fact, I put my foot in that steak and cheese sub. It's really good. So if you guys are really liking the content on this channel, and if you're loving these recipes, please like this video. Please share this with your friends and family, anyone that you think would benefit from recipes that are gluten-free and plant-based. Also remember that all of these recipes originated from recipes that weren't gluten-free and plant-based. So if you're not gluten-free and plant-based, you can easily still enjoy these by just subbing some things out to the regular ingredients that you eat. Try these out. What's 1 or 2 days during your week of going plant-based? I mean, they have no meat Mondays for a reason. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it so that you're alerted every single time that I post. And make sure you comment down below that steak subs rule. So come on, come cook with me. Let's go make some slammin' subs. We're going to start our sub sandwiches by preparing the mushrooms, which is going to ultimately be our meat filling. I'm using oyster mushrooms here, and I purchased 3/4 of a pound of mushrooms, which will be enough to make our 4 sub sandwiches. As you kind of pull apart the pieces of the oyster mushroom, you will start seeing that they take on kind of a meaty texture, a meaty look to them. And I'm just going to kind of rip them into little pieces so that we have what looks like chopped up steak. Now, in order to give our oyster mushrooms that steak flavor, we are going to have to marinate these. We have to infuse the flavor into the oyster mushrooms so that not only does it have the meaty texture, but it also has the meaty flavor. So in this marinade, I've added 2 tablespoons of tamari soy sauce,
2 tablespoons of vegan Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar, 3 teaspoons of liquid smoke, 1 teaspoon of molasses, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of adobo, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of steak seasoning, and salt and pepper to taste. And I've used kosher salt here with freshly cracked pepper. We're going to place the oyster mushrooms inside of this marinade, mix them around nicely. In most cases, I would like these to sit for a few hours up to overnight before preparing them. However, I didn't have that much time for this video, so I just let them marinate for 1 hour. Now we're going to get started on our potatoes for our baked steak fries. We are going to need to soak these for a little while to get some of the starch out of them. So we want to do these early so that everything kind of preps and cooks at the same pace, and so that we're timing our meal correctly. So I'm going to take these potatoes and I'm going to cut these into steak fried shapes. And I'm going to show you here about the sizing that you want for these steak fries. Now, I personally use just a bag of white potatoes that I had around the house. I have done this with russet potatoes. They work out great. The only type of potatoes that don't really work with this recipe are any yellow or gold potatoes. Once we have all of those sliced up, we're going to get them into cold water, and we're going to add a little bit of salt to that cold water, and you want the water to be up over the potatoes so that they're all soaking inside of there. What this is going to do is pull out or draw out some of the extra starch and moisture that are in those potatoes. We want these fries to be just as crispy as if we fried them in hot oil, so we're going to draw out as much moisture as we can. I let this sit on the counter for at least 30 minutes. We're going to get started on our bell peppers, our onion, and our mushrooms. As I've taken 2 bell peppers, 1 red, 1 yellow. You can use any color you like, but with being plant-based, I prefer to eat the rainbow, so I try to get as many colors as I can into each one of our meals. So I'm going to utilize 1 red pepper, 1 yellow pepper, 1 whole onion. This can be any onion that you prefer. I prefer sweet onions in this particular recipe, and 1 can of mushrooms. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I use canned mushrooms a lot, and the reason why I do that is because their water content is far different than fresh mushrooms. Fresh mushrooms are absolutely delicious, but I find myself having to cook them separately from my dish as they create so much water. I'm going to use 1 can of mushrooms here. I'm going to take my bell peppers and I'm going to slice those sort of thin here. I'll show you the sizing in a second of what we want. And then my onion, the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and get some half moons going with these onions, fairly thin. Once our veggies are all sliced, we're going to want to season these up just a little bit. I personally season everything that I cook. I also season in stages. So let's take our seasoning here and we're going to season both of our bell peppers. We're going to season our onions, and obviously our mushrooms are in with our bell peppers. And this seasoning is 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and 1 teaspoon of Italian seasonings. And then I just added some salt and pepper to taste here. Mixed it around and placed it on all of our veggies. Here all we're going to do is we're going to take about a 1/4 head of iceberg lettuce, and we're just going to shred that very thinly. You could utilize the already bagged shredded lettuce here if you need this to be even quicker than the recipe already is, but I personally haven't found an organic version of that yet, so I chopped my own. We're also going to use about 3/4 of a container of organic grape tomatoes, and here I'm just going to slice them in 3 or 4s, sometimes 5s depending on how large they are. We just want to have thin slices for the tops of our subs. And once I'm done cutting both of those, I'm just going to put them into a plastic container and place those in the fridge. Okay, so about this time, we're going to move back to our potatoes, and they've been soaking for 30 minutes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse them thoroughly, and we're going to dry them. And when I say dry them, I mean really dry them. We get them placed out onto paper towels, and then I take extra paper towels. I rub the tops of those potatoes because we want to get them as dry as possible. I am going to actually layer this twice in the bowl to make sure that our seasonings get on every single potato. So I'm going to take about half of our fries and put them in the bottom of a bowl. I'm just going to drizzle a tiny bit of extra virgin olive oil over the top, and then I'm going to place in a handful or two of our dry rub marinade. And that dry rub marinade consists of 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of parsley, and some freshly cracked pepper. Notice I am not going to put any salt on these potatoes yet. We do not salt them until they come out of the oven because we do not want to draw out any more moisture. We want these to crisp up really nice. So if you salt them here, they're going to be soggy. Let's salt them directly at the end as soon as they come out of the oven, and they are going to be crispy and delicious. These fries are going to cook on 425 in the oven for around an hour. So we're going to get them on the trays now and get the oven preheated so that our fries can be done at the same time that our steak sandwiches are ready. So here I'm lining the potatoes so that they are only in one layer. And I know this looks really tedious, and I apologize, but I promise you, this is the only way to do it. If you're going to bake your steak fries and you want them to be crispy as if they came out of hot oil, you are going to have to single layer these. And this is what our trays look like when they're all ready for the oven. Now to cook our veggies, I'm opting to utilize my electric skillet today. You absolutely can use a fry pan on top of your stovetop. I just wanted to use an electric skillet so I would have less mess. Here what we're going to do is take our 1 onion with just about a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, and we're going to saute that up. And now I'm going to take about 4 cloves of garlic that I minced, and I'm going to place that on top of the onions. Once the onions and garlic have cooked for about another minute, I'm going to now place in our bell peppers and our mushrooms. I'm going to use my wooden spoon to scrape the bottom of the electric skillet a little bit to get some of those dark bits off the bottom. And I'm also going to use about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of water just to kind of get the seam going on these veggies and to be able to deglaze the bottom of my pan, because I want to get all of those flavors that are at the bottom on our vegetables. Now I only cook our vegetables at maximum, maybe 5 minutes total. As soon as I start seeing the bell peppers get really, really bright in color, I pull those right out onto a separate plate to let those rest on the counter, because I don't want mushy vegetables. It's a little snap to them, but fully cooked. Okay, so we're going to use the same electric skillet to now cook our oyster mushrooms, which will become our steak filling. And again, I've just placed about a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil in the bottom of the electric skillet, and now I'm going to start placing my oyster mushrooms that have been marinated for at least an hour at the bottom of the skillet. Make sure when you're adding these mushrooms that you are not adding the liquid, or you're adding as little of the marinade liquid as possible. I actually use a colander most times, and I will drain my mushrooms first so that I get most of the moisture out, because you want these to caramelize a little bit. And as you know, if you cook a lot, if you put way too much liquid in the bottom, it will never caramelize. My mushrooms cooked for about 4 to 5 minutes. What I have here is a standard gluten-free and vegan hot dog roll, but I'm going to use these as a sub roll today. So we've placed our roll down on a tray with parchment paper. We're going to add our oyster mushrooms. You're going to want to get about 1/4 of your mushrooms on your roll. And then we're going to add some of the vegetables on the top. So we're going to place our bell peppers and our onions and our mushrooms and our garlic on the top of the steak. From there, we're going to use a small handful of this Follow Your Heart Parmesan cheese, which you've probably heard me talk about before. Really is like regular Parmesan cheese. I am not currently sponsored by any of these products, but I would love to be, so please tell all of your friends. And then I'm going to use a 1/2 slice of Follow Your Heart provolone cheese. I'm going to use a small handful of these mozzarella Violife shreds. And then I'm going to shred just a tiny bit of this black mozzarella Follow Your Heart on the very top. Once your fries are crispy and have come out of the oven, you can then place your steak subs into that same 425-degree oven. Just make sure that you cover your tray with some foil, because the foil is what helps all of this vegan cheese melt. Your sub sandwich only has to be in long enough for the cheese to melt. On top of our sub, we're going to add some shredded lettuce and some of the tomatoes that we sliced up earlier. We're also going to add a good amount of gluten-free vegan mayonnaise. Then for some fresh herbs and a little bit of fun, I've added some fresh oregano over the top of my sandwich, and I'm going to place a little bit on our fries as well. Anytime you can get fresh herbs into your diet, that's considered a green, guys. So it's really, really important to get your fresh herbs in whenever you can, and it makes the plate look really pretty. And here is our steak and cheese sub with our oven baked steak fries. Absolutely delicious. Please make sure that you like this video and you share it with your friends and family, or anybody that you think will benefit from these plant-based and gluten-free recipes. Just hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so that you're alerted every single time that I post. If you make this recipe and absolutely love it, comment down below. Steak and cheese subs rule. I know that your options on YouTube are unlimited, so I really appreciate it when you decide to tune into my channel and watch my videos, like them, and subscribe. I hope you love this channel, and I hope you love this recipe. Thanks so much for your support, guys. I'll see you next time.